When I was a cadet, what's the cadet motto at West Point? You will not lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those who do. I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire training courses.
It's worth it to take the time to explain what a privateer is. Back in the day, when pirates were the great outlaws, a country could attack another country and risk war, or they could covertly pay pirates to do it, which would make them privateers. For example, if the British wanted to attack a Spanish ship coming out of the Caribbean, they couldn't do it with an English ship with an English flag, because that could start a war, and at that time Spain was really strong. So what they could do is pay off a pirate to do it. The pirate, who has a relationship to the royals, would be sharing their loot and paid by the state secretly. They would never attack British ships, they would only attack foreign ships, French, Spanish, whatever. And if a pirate attacks the ship and gets caught, they hang. No war. He did it as an individual. There's nothing they can do about it. This is a way the British could routinely attack Spanish ships covertly through privateers. All the Spanish could do was to continue to routinely capture individual pirates, try them, and hang them. And the British, of course, would act like they were trying to fight pirates too. The whole time, however, they had their own payroll with their own pirates who attacked who they asked them to attack. This system of privateering is exactly how our modern terrorist cells work. The United States and other nations payroll their own terrorist groups, such as Al-Qaeda. They'll attack the Russians in Afghanistan, they'll attack the Russians in Chechnya, they'll fight for us in Bosnia and Kosovo and wherever we tell them to, including the United States itself in a false flag operation. If a terrorist is caught or killed, so what? They're just a terrorist. But the fact that the CIA puts them on the payroll means they're our terrorists. They are modern privateers. You can look at Libya or Syria as an example. The U.S. paid off a bunch of Salafi jihadist religious nuts to go and do its fighting for them, and NATO did the air campaign in Libya. They couldn't do the same thing in Syria because of Syria's anti-air defense, but they have continually, through Qatar, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia, multiple countries note, as well as the same Salafi jihadists they used in Libya, moved the terrorists into Syria, called them the Free Syrian Army, and are terrorizing Syria. These are known terrorists, real terrorist organizations, and the privateers were often real pirates as well. But there are portions of them, especially in the leadership, which are being paid off by intelligence agencies. And the money for this comes from the drug war, because Congress can't appropriate money to say, hey, we're going to go pay terrorists with that. Even the CIA likes to lie. You say, well, why would they lie? They do. They probably could have just said F you world and gone ahead and did a war in Iraq, but they didn't. They lied about weapons of mass destruction and mobile labs and anthrax and yada yada. They're still at the point where they feel like they have to at least try to lie to us. And the CIA lies. Making everything secret also makes everything a lot more expensive and people more manipulatable. It's easy to control the middlemen this way. Well, they use the opium, the heroin from Afghanistan. It's used both in heroin and morphine, so legal and illegal drugs. But this money for the illegal drugs is where they're using the black budgets for the black operations to pay off our privateers to hit targets without having to risk our own soldiers. This is why on 9/11 it was so confusing and strange that the FBI and the NSA and our different alphabet soup organizations were fighting internally with themselves to allow certain terrorists to live openly in the United States and blocking investigations into them because they were our terrorists. There is a look-away list for our own privateers. Al-Hazmi and Al-Mihar were examples of this, who had been used in the USS Cole bombing previously. Now it's up to you to think, did our privateers double-cross us, or was it the plan the whole time? You may ask, was that A, incompetence, because our government is incredibly stupid, B, malevolence, they planned the whole thing and they're genius and they pulled it off like that, or C, a portion of them know what's going on, majority of them are in the dark, and the faction puppeteering everyone else is using them because they surround themselves with dupes and incompetent people on purpose because they're easy to manipulate, and that's how our government works. I go with option C. This system of proxy wars and false flags and using mercenaries really escalated during the time of the Cold War. Because of the advent of the nuclear bomb and mutual destruction, the only way to really go to war any longer was to attack through proxy and to use mercenaries and to only attack nations that didn't have the bomb. Of course, they could be backed by other nations that did, which is why everyone is racing to get nuclear weapons. As we can all see what happened when Gaddafi decided not to, he ended up getting sodomized by a knife. But if you knock out the drug war, and we're talking about $64 to $65 billion a year annually from opium out of Afghanistan, you would pull the plug on the finances for a lot of these black operations. And people can see clearly, there is no grassroots revolution in Syria. These are paid off mercenary groups. And each party and each faction have different interests for wanting to topple the regime. But if you think it's too complicated for multiple nations to get together and use mercenary groups to attack other nations or themselves, think again. Syria is a very clear example. Iran-Contra is another example where multiple nations got together, secretly created a lot of money selling drugs and weapons, and paid off mercenaries to fight in a third country, in Nicaragua. And 9/11 worked very much the same way. Our own Al-Qaeda attacked the United States with the U.S.'s own help, and it was covered up by the same intelligence agencies that started it to begin with. It acted as the pretext for the war on terror, which replaced the Cold War to justify all the massive military spending we've seen since, and the erosion of civil liberties and the rise of a despotic, fascist police state. Al-Zawahiri was much more of an influential privateer than bin Laden, but you never use your real puppet's face for the brand sold to the public. As Oliver North infamously stated, you must create
plausible deniability.
We wanted to be able to deny a covert operation.
Plausible deniability. What he said here is so huge. Though the Iran-Contra operation in particular ended, that style of operation has been ongoing. Gladio 2.0 has been much in the same vein. There are a multitude of ways to launder money through Saudi Arabia, Turkey, etc., through bogus NGOs, CIA-assisted narcotics trafficking, and fake foundations to create plausible deniability. Take the case of Fethullah Gulen, living in the U.S. as a preacher, but in reality, to anybody with any common sense looking at it, he's just a transparent conduit for the CIA NATO to funnel $20 billion worth of funds into so-called Islamic schools and mosques, which are themselves fronts for training the next round of rent-a-terrorists, a mixture of privateers and useful idiots. I want to stress that though naming names and documenting who said what and did what is very important, all of these neocons are exchangeable and expendable. The criminals change from one administration to the next, but the system, the MIC, the military-industrial complex, always finds new profiteers to pick up where the last ones left off. Though so many of these players are Zionist ideologues, it is only with the overlapping mutual benefits for military industries that these murder fantasies become realities. The MIC will always support the craziest, most racist, most bloodthirsty factions it can find, because they're good for business. Thus why PNAC's Weekly Standard's prime financial sponsor was Lockheed Martin. Think of it like a car driving on a road. The road is war. The car is government. The financial institutions are the fuel, and the MIC is the driver. Each needs the other. But getting back to bin Laden, it's still important to hone in on this figure because he's so essential to the official story, and yet he was supported by the U.S. throughout his career.